The world knows homeless as a guy on the corner begging for money, said Christy McNally, Newport Independent Schools Services Tools and Empowerment Coordinator. This is an invisible population that people do not really understand. Homelessness refers to children and young people lacking a fixed, regular, adequate nighttime residence, according to the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, which is the primary piece of federal legislation that provides rights and services to children and youth experiencing homelessness. These are the rights of eligible children and youth under the McKinney-Vento Act. Right to immediate school enrollment, even when records not present. Right to remain in the school of origin if in the student's best interest, right to receive transportation to and from the school of origin, and the right to receive support for academic success. Just under 2,500 students were identified as experiencing homelessness during the 2021-2022 school year across 9 NKY Metro school districts, according to data from the Kentucky Department of Education. Those school districts, which were part of the Northern Kentucky Homeless Education Collaborative, are Covington Independent, Campbell County, Kenton County, Boone County, Southgate Independent, Newport Independent, Dayton Independent, Bellevue Independent, and Erlanger-Ellesmere Independent. The Northern Kentucky Homeless Education Collaborative comprises of 9 homeless liaisons in each district who meet monthly. As part of the McKinney-Vento law, each district must have a homeless liaison. McNally said Newport has 237 students out of its 1,400 student population who are experiencing homelessness. Most school districts, McNally said, have paperwork at the time of enrollment to identify students that are housing insecure. Kenton County School District Superintendent Henry Webb said its process is similar.
Yeah, this past year I think we had about 525.
Wow.
Yes, it's quite a few. Of course, once again, we're a very large school district, and that number in comparison has been fairly consistent the last 2 or 3 years. It was a little higher before the pandemic.
Oh.
Yeah, so which makes me believe that we've got some kids that may be unidentified. Well, in our school district, our multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS, is the backbone of everything we do. So that's the instruction and the social emotional learning. And our teachers are trained and our staff is trained on both sides of that pyramid. We have a pyramid on our website, and we have layers of interventions within our system and structures to help meet the needs of our kids academically and socially and emotionally. So part of that training helps teachers identify students that are struggling socially and emotionally, and typically, not always, but lots of times, in many cases, students that are homeless or experiencing homelessness struggle socially and emotionally. So our teachers and staff are trained to identify that. It would be my wish as superintendent of Kenton County Schools that every child had a stable environment to go home to every single night. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over that at times. We don't control, affordable housing. We don't control a lot of those kinds of things. But I would hope that all of our families in Kenton County and in the region would be able to secure and make good decisions. And, we have a vibrant economy where work is readily available, that everybody would be engaged, and all 14,000 plus of our students would be able to go home every single night to their home where they have a bed and they have a house. That would be my wish. As far as strategies in our school district, we're going to continue to support every child. Our motto is it's about all kids, and that all means all. And, our homeless kids matter. All of our kids matter, and we're going to continue to embrace them and give them the resources they need while they're dealing with any kind of challenges in their life, to include homelessness. Sure, yeah. So, one of the things that we want to make sure happens, and we also believe this may be a reason sometimes that parents and families don't share with us that they are homeless, is because they're afraid their child will be upended and be moved, because, unfortunately, sometimes parents and families have to move during the school year, and they don't want to tell us because they're afraid if they tell us, that child will not be able to stay in that environment. But through the Homeless and McKinney-Vento Act, which I think is it's one of the strongest parts of the act, because the last thing a child experiencing social and emotional issues through being homelessness needs is to be uprooted from their school, their friends, their environment, their teachers that know them, their counselors that know them, their staff that know them. So yes, we partner, and I will tell you, our districts in our region do a wonderful job. We partner We work collaboratively to make sure that if it's the right thing for that child, it's not always. Sometimes the parents want them to go to a new school, or sometimes the child wants to go to a new school. But if it's right for that child and right for the family, then we partner to keep that child in their home environment. And sometimes for many, many years, and sometimes at lengthy bus rides. I think our longest ride in our county is about an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, it's a trip. Yeah, I would just like to say that anybody that, is willing to provide information to us that somebody may be homeless that we may not know about, somebody may need resources that maybe we haven't learned about, we would love to have that information because, once again, we're always looking for ways to support our students. And if there's any business, entity, family, parent out there that wants to support homeless kids in our school system, please reach out to our family resource centers in our schools. There's all kinds of ways to help. It's not always money, it's time. People can give their time to mentor, but obviously any donations will be accepted as well to help support our homeless students or any way they want to be engaged in our school system.
As a young adult, David Childs experienced homelessness. It wasn't because of addiction or mental illness. He even grew up in what we would call a stable home, so he encourages those working with children in similar situations to not assume what homelessness looks like.
One of the sort of myths about homelessness is that most people that are homeless are either have a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction or mental illness, and that's not all. That wasn't the case with me, although that is the case. And often that's often the case because I do work with homeless. I have a nonprofit. Faith-based nonprofit, First NKY Ministries, where we work with homeless, those who are housing insecure. But in my case, I just didn't have a lot of resources. My family doesn't come from wealth, and so I was in a situation where I didn't have a place to stay. But fortunately, I was connected with Lighthouse Youth Services in Cincinnati, and so I had a place to lay my head, but I had to be a part of a homeless organization. So I wanted to add that caveat. And it was while I was in college, in my sophomore year in college, I was in Lighthouse Youth Services, and they provide housing for, at least at that time, for housing alone for youth between the ages of 17 and 23, I think it is. And so, yes. And so that was I went through that process, and it's tough trying to be a college student and not having anything to eat, or not knowing where your next meal is going to come from. And so going through that process can definitely affect your academic process. I come from a stable home. It's just we didn't always have the resources to have housing. When I got on my own, I had to figure it out. There's a number of things that come with being housing insecure, and you don't often know where your meal is going to come from. You don't have a place to shower. You don't have a place to change clothing. You don't have anywhere to store your clothing. That's really, really important. It's something people don't think about a lot. So you don't have a lot of resources, and often people that are housing insecure, they have their possessions in various locations. Like they may have clothes at an aunt's house. They may have their important documents, like school documents, paperwork for school, the birth certificates, Social Security cards. That might be at like grandma's house. And so that's a piece that really can be complex. And so often those children will have, or the youth, or whatever the case may be, whether it's a child or a young adult, they'll have like two outfits. And so sometimes they might have one pair of pants and 3 shirts. And so they're going to change a shirt to make it seem like they have more than one outfit. Because as I said, you often don't have anywhere to put your possessions. You have to travel lightly. I mean, people often don't think that students need a social worker, though. Even at a young age, even in the suburbs, because people think the urban environments are the ones that need the most help. But you got like rural schools, for example, rural Kentucky. They need the same kinds of services. Somebody to, besides just giving resources, it has to be intentional. Because one can say, okay, we need more outfits. For example, some schools have school uniforms, providing, and often uniforms have a cost. And so having programs, I've seen schools where they have programs where students could have a voucher to get a uniform, but they need more than one. They need 2 or 3. And then vouchers for laundry, those kinds of things, or resources where they can get their laundry done, a voucher for the laundromat, whatever the case may be. Transportation is an issue. How to get to different places. A person that's not housing insecure, they need services on all levels like that. So those things you may not think of. Transportation. Now they're doing summer lunch programs, so food vouchers and resources during the summer outside of school. That's pretty common too, or more and more common. We need to keep thinking about that as well. Yeah. Yes, I always give credit to Lighthouse Youth Services, and when I was a couple years ago, they invited me to be on their board, and one of the things they asked me is what kind of things were helpful in the program. So first of all, housing, providing an apartment for a young man that would not otherwise have been able to afford a place to stay. And then it was not a sort of dilapidated building. It was really a nice place. It was clean. It was in a decent neighborhood. And so it got me off the street. We had social workers and caseworkers working with us, which is why I emphasize that. They were having dialogue with us. They held us accountable. They had job resources. They often would provide food for us, supplemental, but we were required to get a job, and or be in school, or, have something productive going for ourselves. So I do credit Lighthouse Youth Services for really opening up doors for me, but also the church, the religious community that I was involved in probably was the most impactful for me because it helped me make good choices. It helped me provide that work ethic. It provided so much the spiritual piece for me, and then planted a seed to want to do better and just go further in life, and then pay it forward after that. Reach back and pull others. So I had a really strong religious community. It was an inner city church. It was an urban church. And so the unique thing about that particular church is they had their ear to the ground as it relates to urban issues. So it wasn't like talking down to the homeless folks. It wasn't like talking at people, but it was more of a dialogue because the organization was right there. And I think Lighthouse played that same kind of role. So the key was just empathy and not treating me as if I was, have made all these mistakes and that I deserve to be, poor and no money, but give me a leg up and a hand up to be able to go forward. I think that was so important for me. And then even when I was in the Lighthouse program, that's when I met my wife. She wasn't in the program, but I met her while I was in the program. And we got married while I was in the program. And what Lighthouse did was help us find a market apartment whereby we could transition from Lighthouse to a regular apartment, if you will. And they also helped us get furniture. So those kinds of things is really important. They're really strategic in terms of helping us. And from there, I was able to go on and get a college degree. And, for me, the rest was history. And so I needed those resources. But it was very intentional. And it wasn't overnight. It was a stair step. Things don't always happen overnight. And it's a patient work. And it takes time to work with youth and understand where they are. They're going to make mistakes. And one of the key pieces is we can't judge them. We can't look down on them because everybody does not come to life with the same resources. And I was basically a victim of my circumstances. My dad never went to college. My mom never went to college. They did the best they could. My dad was a smart man. He had, he started his own business. We were able to come out of the inner city and everything. But it still wasn't enough for me to do the things I was trying to do. So, yeah. Young people are complex, and looking at a person, whether they are black, white, brown, short, tall, from Indian Hill, Cincinnati, or from inner city, Covington or Newport, we have to give them a chance. We have to listen to them. And we often talk to people with a set of preconceived notions about them, but it's so important that we're patient with them. They're going to make mistakes. Some people, you wouldn't believe what the circumstances that some of the young people in our schools are going through, the living conditions that they're a part of. And for them to even be after school sometime is just a major feat. And so we have to be thoughtful about what kinds of things we can provide for them, breaking the mold. It's not one size fits all. Talking to the students, see what they need. Sometimes what we might think a student need is not what they need in terms of resources, in terms of support, in terms of emotional support, intellectual support, educational support. We have to listen and be more nuanced and careful about what we're seeing and what we give them. I think that's so crucial. Even getting the teachers involved. Often we have a team. There's a teacher, there's a school psychologist, there's the principal, there's the parent, there's the student, and trying to figure out what the best plan is for that student. Often homelessness, housing insecure goes under the radar. And again, it doesn't look like what we think. Sometimes it's not the mother on crack and the mother as an alcoholic, but it's just a person like myself who didn't have the resources. And I've always been good at school. Many times made all the right decisions, but I just found myself, without enough money to take a bus anywhere, And if I just had $5 to get down the street, that's what it's about. I mean, nowadays, a person, people like us with great jobs and careers, $10 is like, okay, I'm gonna go to Panera Bread and get a sandwich and a drink. But for a person that's housing insecure, $10. In fact, we're working with individuals right now. $10 is a lot. It's the difference between taking a bus somewhere and getting a bite to eat, or $30 is the difference between them having somewhere to stay or not. So that's what I want to say.